Hey now folks, my name is Nick, this is Board Game Brawl, and welcome to your Kickstarter board game update for October 3rd, 2013. Now, a lot of projects came out in the last few weeks since I put out my last Kickstarter update video. A lot of them very cool, some of them not so cool in my opinion, but very interesting nevertheless. And remember that this is all the ones I'm bringing you now, and the stuff that I say is just my opinion. I'm just bringing these projects to your attention. But nevertheless, there's a lot going on Kickstarter right now, so let's go ahead and get right to it. I will say very quickly, though, that if you want to check out any of the projects that I'm featuring in this episode, you can go ahead and go to Kickstarter.com, and you can either use the little search field up at the top and just type in the name of the game and hope for the best, because it doesn't always work out that well. Or you can go to the tabletop gaming section underneath Discover New Projects and go to More Popular Projects. That's usually the best way to find everything that you want. They'll all be listed there in no particular order. So let's start off with a showstopper, and it is the biggest campaign in the tabletop gaming section of Kickstarter right now, and one of the biggest campaigns period on Kickstarter right now, sending huge waves through the entire site. Of course, I am talking about Centerpiece, the ultimate strategic board game of, I don't even know. Okay, this is kind of a joke, but you should go and check out that page, because I don't know what's going on there, but it is the best video I've ever seen for a Kickstarter ever. Anyways, what I really wanted to start off with was Reaper Bones 2. This is the Reaper Miniatures line that is the sequel to a campaign they ran last year, which was wildly successful, made over $2 million. It might still hold the record for the most funded tabletop gaming project. I don't know. Sometimes they count just board games for that, like Zombicide Season 2, but it made a tremendous amount of money. And this particular iteration of it funded in 3 minutes. Whatever its funding goal was, I don't even know, because right now, by the end of that day, it was over $1 million, and now it's, the last time I checked, at the time of this video, was about $1.4 million. And it still has, I think, 23 days to go. So it is going to definitely, I would guess, surpass its older sibling, and I think the miniatures look amazing. Certainly there is no complaints there. I am tentatively backing it, I have to say, just because I don't know what I'm going to do with all those miniatures. Plus, my acquisition disorder kicks in and makes me want to get more and more, because even though the base pledge level, which is another unique thing about this Kickstarter, is that all the pledge levels are just $100. The only difference, you could just go, I think, for a $1 or $5 pledge level where you can just add on some things, but all the other pledge levels are $100, and the only difference is that they're in different waves. The earlier you get in, you can get on an earlier wave, which means they'll be shipped to you faster. It's apparently a departure from what they did with their last Kickstarter, just to simplify things. So I kind of like that, actually. I hate when there's confusing pledge levels, and we'll get to that in a minute. But, you know, even with the base set at $100, you get a ton of miniatures. I don't know what you would even need all the other add-ons for, but they're there. It does kind of itch my acquisition disorder to get them all. I'm not even in any tabletop games really right now where I would need those, but I don't know. They're amazing. You should definitely check it out if you're into miniatures at all. So let's keep on with the miniatures trend and go to Fairy Tale Games, the Miniatures campaign. So Fairy Tale Games is not only the name of the company, but they also did a tabletop card game sort of called Battle Royale Fairy Tale World or something earlier this year, not too long ago, just a few months ago, featuring sort of mature, more action-oriented versions of fairy tale characters like Snow White and Alice in Wonderland. And there's stretch goals for zombie Alice in Wonderland, zombie Snow White, and all that stuff. Well, this campaign is actually for a miniatures line, which I'm not sure if this is a game in and of itself or just miniatures that are designed to work with their other fairy tale games. But much like with the Reaper's miniatures, these look amazing. They look really, really cool. So if you're into miniatures, or if you're into fairy tale characters, or especially if you're into both, you should definitely go ahead and check it out. One that just posted in the last couple days, maybe it was just today actually, was Chibi Anime Adventurers. So this is a line of, just like it's from Impact Miniatures, and just like the name suggests, they are little tiny miniatures done in chibi anime style. And I looked at it, and it's like every type of possible archetype of anime, manga style, Asian kung fu themed character you can think of. is represented. They look decent. I mean, if it's your thing, a lot of people do not like that cheapy style. I have Super Dungeon Explorer, and I like that a lot, but I don't know. If you can find a game that would fit those like Super Dungeon Explorer, I guess that would be for you. Here's an interesting one. Color Wars Dark Threat. Now, this is from I can't even remember the name. I'm sorry right now, but it's in Devil Pig Games. That's what it is. I'm sorry. It's a very interesting project in that I defy you to go to their page and make sense of any of it if you don't have any prior knowledge. Apparently, this was another Kickstarter campaign for Color Wars some time ago, or maybe it was just another game that they did, and this is sort of a sequel to that. So the game looks really confusing in and of itself, but they're adding the option for miniatures, so this is mainly a miniatures campaign, and the miniatures do look really, really cool. But the pledge levels are very confusing. There's something of a language barrier because I think that the company is from France or some country in Europe. Very confusing pledge tiers to me, and it's very confusing telling if you can get the base game with this game or whatnot, but it definitely is interesting. The miniatures are awesome. If it piques your interest at all, you should go ahead and check it out. Don't take my word for it. A gaming accessory this time, Metal Dragon coins. Now these are actually from Minion Games, and Minion Games is I would say they're fairly new, but pretty well established gaming company. I have a game of theirs called Venture Forth. They did the Manhattan Project, which I haven't tried, but looks pretty cool. But this is an accessory. These are metal coins, and I think they come in different types, depending on what you want to pledge for. They look really cool, really nice, and very cheap, which is the important part. I've always wanted to bling out my games with either metal coins or poker chips, but they're very expensive. These look like they're very affordable, and they even have a very cool chart on the Kickstarter campaign page that tells you what amount of coins and denomination of coins you will need for some of your favorite games. The one that caught my eye was Small World, because I can't tell you how many of those little annoying cardboard tokens I've lost to a certain beagle who shall remain nameless. So hopefully these will be much more durable. So check that out. I think that if the price is right for you, you should definitely be interested. Shadows Over the Empire. Now, that this is not a Star Wars related game, despite what that name makes it sound like. This is actually from Mage Company. Mage Company is the publishing company behind 12 Realms, which is a Kickstarter campaign that I backed that I am really looking forward to. It looks more and more amazing the more photos I see of it. And this has a particular art style that they used in another Kickstarter campaign they did a few months ago called Archon, which I really love. And I'm kind of sad that I didn't back Archon, and I'm seriously thinking about this campaign. But the game itself actually sounds interesting too, not just the artwork and design. It's basically you all control guilds, and you're vying for control of a city. Seems really cool. There's a rule book. You should check it out if you want. So that's from Mage Company. I'm starting to get a really good feeling about the company, and I hope that they succeed. Now, this one's interesting because it's sort of they call it a double feature, 2 board games for the pledge of 1, so to speak. Captains of Industry and City Hall, both from Tasty Minstrel Games, and from one particular designer, I think Michael Keller is his name. These are both medium to heavy Euro games, and Captains of Industry, it's basically like a marketplace Euro where you're trying to vie for control of different capitalistic parts of a city, and in City Hall, you're actually trying to be mayor by influencing and auctioning and bidding over different factions and workers in the city. Not really my types of games, to be honest, but I've heard a lot of good buzz about both of these. Tasty Minstrel Games does have some really decent, high-quality games. They certainly are very well established on Kickstarter, so you can probably pledge with confidence. Here's one that's really interested me, and that's Planet Defiant, the Onslaught of Vanus. Now, this was actually a campaign that was canceled on its first run, but they've relaunched recently, and they're doing very, very well. They've already made their funding, and at first I thought it was very, very poor timing because for the first week or so that they were that their relaunch was launched, they were up against Alien Uprising, which was the game from Richard Launius, which has almost the exact same theme, which is to say a starship crash lands on a planet, and the human or whatever survivors have to survive against oncoming waves of aliens that they've just encountered. So very, very similar themes, but different art styles, different gameplay. I liked, the artwork in this one. Planet Defiant has gotten some criticism for being a little too I don't know, cheesy. The women are sort of scantily clad. I didn't really get that impression. I thought it was actually, artwork was quite good and quite in opposition to Alien Uprising, which I also liked artistically. But something to keep your eye on. It's already funded. They're going through the stretch goals. I think it looks pretty cool. Allegiance: A Realm Divided. I don't really know what to make of this game. I know that it's a fantasy game that seems to be one of the games that's sort of a trend lately, or at least in the last couple of years, of treading the line between a board game and a tabletop role-playing game and trying to get that mesh together. I know that a beta rulebook just came up. I'm going to have to check that out because it looks a little confusing just from the Kickstarter page. But what I will say is that the artwork is gorgeous. Each player is going to take control of a different adventurer, fitting some of the typical fantasy archetypes, and trying to finish quests and acquire treasure and all the sorts of things that fantasy heroes do. And the game is actually competitive, not cooperative, which seemed a little strange to me for the theme. So I don't know what to make of that. But like I said, components and artwork look amazing. So if that's your thing, you should give it a look-see. Colony Clash from Imperia Games. Now, the reason this is really on my radar is because Imperia Games was had previously launched a Kickstarter project for a game called Grand Tactics, which I was really enthusiastic about because it looked very similar to my favorite video game of all time, Final Fantasy Tactics, and I'm sure that's where they got the inspiration for their game. But the project was canceled. They didn't think they were going to be able to make the funding or do it in the way that they wanted to, like introducing miniatures and things, which really would have made the game incredible. Hopefully it will be relaunched someday, but this is their latest project called Colony Clash. Very different game. This is a card-driven game about each player is going to choose a type of insect and go at it with the other players, actually, fighting in combat and I guess territory control. But it's all card-driven. It's typically not my type of theme, but it's very interesting. I always like to see board games that do something other than economic worker placement or fantasy theme, which I like fantasy theme, but it gets kind of run into the ground at this point. So that's something to keep an eye on. And we have Marrying Mr. Darcy, which is completely different from almost everything I've just said before this. This is a game based on Pride and Prejudice. It's from Erica Savano. I hope I'm saying that correct. I'm sorry if I'm not. And basically, it's a storytelling, sort of strategic, RPG kind of card game where every player is taking the role of one of the female characters from Pride and Prejudice, and you're trying to basically gain the attention of suitors. So this is definitely, if you're not in touch with your feminine side, if you're a man, this might be not the game for you, but I do think it seems very interesting. I'm always on the lookout for good storytelling games because I've played some really bad ones lately. Story War. But I think that this could be a pretty interesting game, and it has to be better than the other Pride and Prejudice board game. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, you should be listening to the Flip the Table podcast, which is pretty amazing. One of their more recent episodes had the Pride and Prejudice board game, and I don't think I'll be playing or reviewing that anytime soon. So let's go to Novus, which looks like a pretty cool card game from Xenion Games. This is it looks like it was started off to be just a 2-player game of set decks, but as stretch goals have been unlocked, or the hope of stretch goals, they're actually going to make this into more of an LCG where you can modify the decks. But it has your typical sci-fi theme where everyone takes control of a commander and you're vying for resources and influence. I think again this has really, really cool artwork. There's really been some bang up jobs on Kickstarter lately as far as artwork, which is really great. There's no excuse for having bad artwork on a Kickstarter project because, to my mind, you can throw a rock in the comics section of Kickstarter and hit a really decent artist who's struggling to make it. So if you're worried about the cost of art, go there and hire someone dirt cheap who's really good at art and looking for their break. Maybe that's what some of these companies have done. I don't know, but it seems like an obvious choice to me. But anyways, I digress. Novus has cool artwork, a cool concept. I like the fact that they're trying to make it into more of an LCG. Looks like it has a nice box of components. If you're into card games, if that's your primary method of entertainment other than like big grandiose board games, it's something to take a look at. Ninja Dice, which is from Greenbrier Games, which is a company that did not do very well by me with their Z-Pocalypse, if you've seen my review of that. Awful game. But this is a very, very different game than that, so I'll try not to judge it based on its previous work. Ninja Dice looks like more of a King of Tokyo meets dungeon roll, dungeon dice all those kind of different dice games. But in this game, it's kind of unique where you're not just doing that typical Yahtzee mechanic. The way that your dice land and the die rolls of other players are going to influence what you can do. You're basically a ninja who's rolling actions that you can take and threats that you have to overcome, or challenges that you have to overcome, but the threats from the other players could definitely influence you. They make it a point on the Kickstarter page to mention that it is not multiplayer solitaire dice game, which is great because I played another game called Dungeon Roll, which was basically just solitaire, and but with a bunch of people sitting around watching you intently roll dice until it was their turn. Not fun. Not really, but hopefully this is better. It looks interesting. I like the theme. Most dice games don't have much of a theme, but this one seems kind of cute. So that is Ninja Dice from Greenbrier Games. Check it out. And finally, do you need another copy of Werewolf, yet another version? Of course you don't. But there is one up there anyways, simply just called Werewolf. This is a man named Corey Feld, an artist who just wanted to publish his own version of Werewolf with his own artwork. And I certainly don't need another copy of Werewolf. I have the Ultimate Werewolf and I have Ultimate Werewolf Inquisition. Both do a fine job. You probably don't need any other version besides those if I was recommending one to you. But I will say that this version of Werewolf has really cool art. So maybe if you want to retheme your existing Werewolf, Ultimate Werewolf deck or whatever, this might be the way to go. Looks pretty cheap. I don't know. But you can always expect there to be more copies and versions of Werewolf, Mafia, whatever you want to call it. And maybe that's a good thing. Who knows? But that's about all that's interesting me on Kickstarter right this moment. But there's always more projects on the horizon. So please keep tuning in and subscribe for my rather infrequent, random, sporadic Kickstarter updates whenever I feel like there's enough projects to warrant it. My name is Nick. This has been Board Game Brawl. Remember to go to Kickstarter.com, the tabletop gaming section, if you want to look at any of these games. Keep watching all of my reviews, and more importantly, more important than anything else in the world, get out there and game every day and in every way. Take care.